We're gonna cover Roosevelt, LG. Roosevelt, LG, and Ingersoll? Yeah,
Another second, you'll be on, Asha.
so far, the whole field force not here. Really?
I hear someone's background sound. You can go on mute if you're not on.
And we are live, Asha. Go right ahead.
Okay, we'll begin in 1 minute. Hey, good evening. It's 6 p.m. Thank you everyone for joining our Community Advisory Committee meeting. This is our last meeting of the year, and we've been very productive this year. So this will be our year in review meeting, and we will talk about the work that the Safety and Security Subcommittee has been working on. We'll also hear from our City Council representative, and we will get an update from the Brownsville Partnership. We'll hear updates from NYCHA, and we'll hear updates from our members around the table. So before we begin, we would like to go over some of the work that the monitor team has gone through this year. And I will first share a slide that encapsulates some of our work to date for 2023. So as you know, we are very busy in the field and working in the various pillar areas to monitor the work and the progress that NYCHA has been making, particularly as it relates to heat, elevators, safety and security, pest and waste management, mold and lead. So we've issued a number of reports throughout the year. If you haven't had a chance to review them, they're all available on our NYCHA Monitor website. They're very comprehensive, and I encourage you to read them if you haven't yet. We've also, our community resident engagement team have been busy. Every month we host a meeting. We started in January hosting a conversation with the monitor with all of the newly elected and long-serving resident leaders on all of the resident association boards. And then we've had our regular community advisory committee meetings every other month with varying stakeholders from around the city who represent agencies that do important work as it relates to NYCHA. And then we've gone to each of the boroughs to have a community meeting where the residents of the particular borough are our VIPs for the evening, but everyone in the city is invited. And we've been to Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island, and every other month as well. So all of those recordings and transcripts also exist on the website, or summaries of those meetings. If you'd like to take a look at that, we encourage you to do so. We're really proud of the work we've accomplished these past 5 years, and particularly this year in 2023. So with that, I will turn it over to the Deputy Monitor, Dan Barnell, who will give us an update.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Asha. So Bart couldn't be with us this evening, so I want to make some remarks, a lot of it based on my conversations with him before this evening. So I'm sure that all of you have heard the recent news that the first 5-year monitorship contract ends at the end of this coming February, and that starting in March of 2024, the new monitor will be Neil Borofsky from the firm of Jenner and Block. On Bart's behalf, as I said, I want to say a few things about what we anticipate happening with the CAC in particular in the next 5 years under the new leadership of the new monitor team. First, the HUD agreement that required that the monitor create and manage the CAC, of course, will still be in effect for the next phase of the monitorship. The CAC will continue as it has since 2019, when Bart and the rest of the monitor team started. I want to let you know that Bart and I met with the new monitor, Neil Borofsky, and his partner, Max Zupola, last week and had a very good couple-hour conversation about the monitorship. Just so people know, Neil is an experienced monitor who clearly seems dedicated to NYCHA and working with NYCHA to improve their performance and the living conditions of NYCHA's residents. He is currently putting together his team and indicated that some of the members of the current monitor team will be joining his team that, as I said, whose tenure will start in March. We talked a lot about both the successes and challenges for NYCHA in the last 5 years. And among other points, Bart made it very clear that from his perspective, the residents are the most important clients and main focus of the monitorship. It's all about improving the living conditions for NYCHA's residents. And of course, Neil agreed. We also spoke a lot about the CAC and the resident community meetings that Bart and the monitor team, monitor's resident engagement team, all of whom, of course, are on this evening's CAC, have been running since the start of the monitorship. About the fact that requiring the creation of the CAC was one of the best parts of the HUD agreement, about the fact that it creates a continual forum for conversations between resident leaders, NYCHA, the monitor team, HUD, the city council, city hall, and various city agencies who provide services to NYCHA residents. He also mentioned some of the accomplishments of the CAC, the modifications for the recertification process, which you all might remember happened fairly early on, the capital tracker that we've talked about, and of course, in the last year and a half, particularly the the safety and security subcommittee of the CAC. That in many ways, the CAC has become a model structure to improve NYCHA's interactions with its key stakeholders to raise concerns and find solutions. Now, I don't know Neil. I didn't know, had never met Neil. I, of course, heard of him before. We met with him last week, but I have to tell you that he certainly, for me anyway, came across as very dedicated, very committed to continuing the great work of the monitorship, and of course, the great work of the CAC and the emphasis on resident engagement between his team and resident leaders and residents in general. So Bart and our team will continue our work for the next 2.5 months. We will issue an end-of-year monitor report. I'm probably the third week in February coming up, about 2 months from now, offering our views on how NYCHA has progressed these first 5 years, where NYCHA is now, the gains made, the challenges that were made. We will likely also address certain key topics relevant to NYCHA's operations, our thoughts for improving general living conditions at the developments, the need to greatly increase funding for NYCHA, especially for operational costs, developing closer working relationships with its residents, and other topics of concern. Bart and his monitor team will be working hard right up until the very last day of February. There are still some important projects we want to complete, and I expect probably in the February CAC, which I guess will be the next CAC meeting, we'll probably be reporting on some of those things. So that's what Bart and I wanted to say. Obviously, we would love to continue because everybody's put a lot of hard work into this. Obviously, including everybody on the CAC, but NYCHA's in good hands going forward with regard to the monitorship team, the new monitorship team.
Thank you for those remarks, Dan, and that update. So with that, I wanted to turn next and mindful that some members of the subcommittee group might need to drop off a little early. We have Captain Kwong from NYPD, who's going to start us off to let us know about the safety and security trends in the city. And then we'll hear some updates from Michael Thompson from NYFD and Joseph Terranova from NYCHA and James Secreto from NYCHA, please. So in that order, let's begin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Captain Raymond Kwong, the Executive Officer, PSA 3. So just give you a recap of what's going on this year in NYCHA. We are down on most index crimes across the board. The only significant increase that I see, and we all see in the NYPD, is grand larceny autos. And this is as a result of, I guess, the TikTok challenge and the high probabilities of Kias and Hyundais being stolen from the NYCHA parking lots of property. And as a result, we've increased our police presence and information distribution to the residents on how to combat these thefts. In addition, we've experienced a 30% overall reduction in shooting incidents and shooting victims, and this is attributed to the gun arrests that our officers in the department are making on NYCHA property and the surrounding areas. We're down this year about like 30% in gun arrests, but that's because last year we made so many, and it's reflective on the number of incidents that we're taking shooting wise and victim wise on NYCHA property. So we're going to continue our harsh enforcement on perpetrators carrying guns around NYCHA property and developments.
Thank you for that update. And please participate as we continue in our safety and security discussion. We appreciate you joining us this evening, Captain. Okay, next. We wanted to take a moment to introduce Joseph Terranova, who has joined NYCHA a few months ago, but this is our first time having participate in a CAC meeting. So please introduce yourself, let us know a little bit about the work that you're doing and how it impacts NYCHA and the residents in particular. And thank you also for joining our Safety and Security Subcommittee. We appreciate you. So please make your introduction.
Thank you, Asha. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Joe Terranova. I'm been with NYCHA a little over 4 months now, and I can truly say that it's been a pleasure to be here. I am a fire protection engineer, former firefighter, and I've been involved in the fire safety business for just over 35 years now. So I'm hoping to be able to bring my expertise to here, or I'm glad to bring my expertise here to NYCHA, and hopefully be able to improve the conditions that we have from a fire safety standpoint. So I've been tasked by the executive leadership team with building out this department. This used to be just a small unit, fire safety. It's now a fire safety department with multiple units on it. And the idea is to get our fire protection systems into a state of good repair. All right, that will then directly impact the number of outstanding violations that we have and reduce the expenditures for things, for example, like for fire guards whenever systems are out of service. And then, of course, the overall goal is to improve safety throughout the system. Over the past few months, we've been improving our internal processes to validate our asset list, along with coordinating and tracking our assets to the existing impairments and/or deficiencies with the internal maximal work orders and/or third-party vendor work releases, which, when all complete, will streamline our ability to verify that the work has been done satisfactorily by both internal and third-party contractors. So we're going to be able to close out all those impairments and deficiencies that have been noted. We've also initiated a top-down review of the procedures and updating those procedures to the latest codes requirements. New York City published a 2022 fire code and all new references to the NFPA standards associated with that. So we have to update all of our internal procedures, our checklists, our inspection test sheets, et cetera, to all of those. I'm also very happy to announce that just today we extended offers of employment to 4 candidates for field positions when, once processed through HR, will double the size of the field staff. And the goal is to get to a full authorized staffing by the middle of 2024, which will be 15 field staff and then 7 administrators within here. We're going to establish positions for data tracking and analysis, especially on the fire side, tracking all the fires that we have, the cause and origin, and see if we can tease any numbers out of that data to help reduce instances of fires in the future. Even if we could reduce it by 1 fire and save 1 person from having to go through the struggle of being involved in a house fire, it's well worth the effort. Besides overseeing all the inspection, testing, maintenance, and repair of our existing systems, we've also been providing training for our residents. And we actually held our first annual fire safety symposium for TA leaders in partnership with the FDNY, the New York City Fire Museum, and the Community Fund back in October. It was well received. I hope to be able to do that a couple of times a year, borough-wide. This one was for citywide that we held in Manhattan, and it was difficult for a lot of the outlying boroughs to get there. So the idea is we're going to make it a roadshow and try to go borough by borough and provide them not only with the fire safety training that they need, but also updates on where we are in regards to impairments and tracking and reducing those violations. So saying that, it's been a pleasure to be here. I wish you all a very happy holiday season, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we're glad to be working with you. You mentioned that it's now going to be a department with varying units reporting into it. What are those units?
So we've broken it into 5 major units. The first being a fire alarm unit. NYCHA has about close to 400 fire alarm systems. They used to be handled by 1 or 2 individuals. We're actually bringing on certified fire alarm technicians. We're updating our contracts, and we're going to try to get all of those systems updated. Many of them are beyond their useful service life. So we've obtained some funding to replace a number of those older systems. There's also going to be a water-based fire suppression unit, basically to oversee the inspection, testing, maintenance, repair of all of the water-based fire protection systems. So that includes the sprinklers, the standpipes, the underground water mains, the fire pumps that pressurize the system, et cetera. And that does 2 things. One, it reduces our violations, but really most important, it improves the safety of the buildings and our responding firefighters. So we always have to consider that it's not just our residents, but it's also our first responders that we have to protect. Okay. The third unit is what we call TEC. The TEC unit, TEK, it stands for roof tanks for our water supply, but that's domestic and fire suppression water, portable fire extinguishers, and then the range hood, the kitchen suppression systems. All right. The 4th unit then is going to be our admin unit, and that's going to include some secretarial or administrative assistant staff to help with the record keeping. There are a ton of records that are required to be kept, especially for many systems from cradle to grave. We have to maintain those records from the time a system is first designed to the time we finally take it out of service. So NYCHA has those records, but many of them are still on paper, or actually from the original buildings. They're probably still on stone tablets and vellum. So we're going to get those digitized for easy access for our inspection staff. All right. And then I'm hoping if we have good success with that, I'd like to bring on an investigative unit to further the investigative process, right? So FDNY is our partner with this. The Office of the Fire Marshals go out and they do all the cause and origin investigations, but they leave it at a certain point. Their goal or their focus is really to determine if it's an incendiary fire, meaning there's criminal intent. And then they'll zero in, or they'll get to a generic thing. They'll say, oh, it was an electrical causation, in the corner or something like that. They're not tasked with digging out the fire all the way down to the floor, in looking at the electrical wiring behind the walls, looking at, is it a possible faulty appliance or something like that. So I'm hoping to be able to build out that investigative side of it so that we can get to the true, the pinpoint cause and origin, and hopefully use that in our engineering guides, and maybe even recommendations for residents to either use a different appliance, not purchase a particular product, or even improve the way we do it. We do our business. So for example, we had a fire recently where there was an extension cord run under a carpeting, and we all know that that's not an appropriate thing to do. But this particular cord had no label, no listing on it. It was probably purchased at a dollar store, had no safety requirements with it. So if we can publish that information on the cause and origin and the statistics associated with it, I'm hoping that we have an impact on reducing the number of fires that we have.
Very important work. Like you said, if even one life is saved, it's worth it. Thank you for that. So with that, let's keep the theme with FDNY and turn to Chief Thompson, please, who's really been a tremendous leader in this space, helping, working with us on ways to improve coordination with FDNY and NYCHA, with keys and key fobs and responsible approaches to the doors and elevators and all of that. So please give us updates.
Asha, if I may, I just want to jump in one last thing. I just met Chief Thompson a few months ago when I started here, and he's like a brother I never had. The relationship that we've developed has been heartfelt and much appreciated. He's been giving me a huge amount of support, and I couldn't get to the position where I am now in regards to our improvements without his help. So thank you, Chief.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Joe.
Chief.
The pleasure's all mine. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm a battalion chief working for fire operations. I just want to provide you with an update on what we've done since the FDNY, what we're doing, and what I'm tasked with since the last CAC meeting. We're ongoing with the key distributions. We get requests weekly for new keys, and new keys get sent out to units, fobs, key fobs. We're still working on identifying hard key locations throughout the 5 boroughs. We're going to finalize our EMS key fob distribution.
And before you leave the keys, I want to just kudos again to you on this, because historically it really been an ad hoc process and you've centralized it. So if you could also talk a little bit more about the process now and how that's been improved this year.
Oh, okay, so the process used to be we received the keys from NYCHA. They were distributed to all fire units throughout the city, the 5 boroughs. And if a unit needed a replacement key fob, they would contact a phone number, and then NYCHA would deliver a fob to that location. There was no way for us to track when they were getting it. We didn't know as a department, we didn't know who had what serial numbers. So now we've basically everything is streamlined. So anyone who needs a fob is supposed to come contact. There's an email address. We have put out training videos. We have put out buck slips. We did put out something on a department order with regards to doors and key fobs, just to educate everybody. Sometimes people still go back to the old way of ordering. Like there's a note on a desk, and in need of fob, call this number. And so that's where it's going to take forever. That those Post-its, they stay around for a while. But it has been working pretty well. I can say that the key fobs are tough for us to operate with. We've been doing the best we can. Our units do the best they can with them. They try and make them work as best as possible. And I'm a firm believer in moving forward. It would benefit both the FDNY, the residents of NYCHA, and everybody, all parties involved, if the installation of new doors had an access key similar, at 1620, 2642 key access to the front door, which is a first responder key. Everyone has one on them. It's a hard key. They don't break. That we always have one. So that would be really helpful in the future. But if someday maybe we're able to make that, we'll keep going and working with the key fobs. As far as the hard, I'm personally still working on identifying all the hard key locations based off of the key fob information I was given and identifying properties. And then from that point, I have to break down by alarm box what units respond to those specific addresses. It's pretty time consuming to go through because there are a lot of properties. I'm hoping maybe by the end of January, I'll be able to finish Staten Island. I have been working closely with Joe Terranova, resolving issues. Joe's been a huge help in resolving fire suppression systems that have been out of service, getting them back in service, letting me know what's in service and out of service. So it's been extremely helpful, because this is the first interaction I've had with someone from NYCHA on the fire protection side since I've been doing this. And I've been doing this now for, I think, two and a half years, maybe, give or take 3 years. So But I appreciate the help, Joe, and everybody else. But that's really all I have for tonight. I'm open for any questions.
Sorry, I think I interrupted you when you were going to give the update on the EMS distribution.
Yeah, so I'm working on finalizing all the spreadsheet, and then once that's completed, I'm going to email it to safety and security, and they'll assign key numbers, and then we'll get them all in one shot, and hopefully in January of 2024, all our EMS units and officers will be have keys, key fobs.
Important. Thank you for that. Any further updates? Okay, great. I'm going to switch the order a little bit to hear from Councilmember Avias ahead of Chief Secreto, because some of her concerns and comments might play into your remarks, Chief Secreto. So hopefully the conversation will dovetail. Councilmember?
Chief Secretary, I hope you understand she's saving the best for last with that order. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good to see you all. I'm Councilmember Alexa Vilas. For those I have not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm the chair of the Public Housing Committee at City Council. I guess just to report in, on November 30th, we actually held a hearing with the committee in conjunction with the Committee on Aging regarding NYCHA safety on campuses, which very much looked at like the infrastructure. So the conversation around keys, around locking systems, open doors, in addition to security training and cameras, whether they're functioning or not functioning, and how we're keeping all track of that was discussed at the hearing. I will say, we have a long way to go, and it seems like in some ways, wow, we've gone high tech with layered access. It seems to everything births a new set of problems, and it feels like we're getting close to going back to the original like standard lock and key. So I think there's a long way to go to figure out how to troubleshoot these systems for all the issues that continue to arise. So thank you, Chief Thompson, for all your work and trying to pair these things together, and certainly Mr. Terranova. It sounds like y'all got a good thing going and you're making a lot of progress together, which is great for the safety of our residents. So unfortunately, there was still a great number of issues that the hearing, are just outstanding. Both operational in nature, like how do we get property managers and caretakers to be able to do the repairs at a much cheaper cost than doing these contractors, which are charging exorbitant amounts and causing great delays. Still, I think, an outstanding issue that NYCHA is working on. And unfortunately, what we're still hearing from seniors across NYCHA campuses is that they feel very unsafe, and it's everything from, actual, things they encounter to a lot of darkness on campuses. So lighting was also discussed, elevators, it's all interwoven, elevator repairs and being stuck out of your units and all of that creates. So there was a lot of answers that NYCHA could not respond to at the hearing. So we're expecting them to follow up with fuller answers. I was, deeply concerned about that, given that we did provide a good number of those questions in advance, and not being able to get to those answers at the hearing is always dissatisfactory, to say the least. So we'll keep plugging on that. Also, we're looking to pass Intro 464, which essentially is a bill asking NYCHA to report on the efficacy of the RAD Pact program. There's a lot of work, and clearly it is a program that the administration is really kind of going whole hog in. And I think the admin has demonstrated they've learned some lessons from it and certainly have tried to improve outreach. Nevertheless, I think given the scale and scope and its ongoing ongoing growth, that we should really take a look at it and make sure that we are doing that as diligently as possible. So that'll be for the new year. And then I guess we're looking at a wrapping up of vote of Nostrand houses around the trust. And the second development has already been announced. I think it was Bronx River. I haven't seen the full details around, the good, bad, and the ugly of this new project. I think we're going to learn more, certainly. And I think it is true to say NYCHA has made really a grand effort to repair some of its outreach and engagement work that it does kind of like standard resident elections. They seem to be really trying to step up in this regard. So we'll look more closely into what is happening there. And then lastly, and I'm done with this report, but happy to answer questions. Just yesterday, we had a hearing around the mayor's November plan, and how all the budget cuts will impact NYCHA. And it certainly seems, NYCHA's money flows through HPD. It doesn't get money directly from New York City. And the vacant unit readiness program seems to be, and I said this on the record yesterday, the fixation of this administration when it wants to cut stuff, it always seems to go back to this program. We restore, they cut, we restore, they cut. They're moving these resources from expense to the capital side of the ledger. My concern is, while it looks like a net zero, the truth of the matter is capital projects have a very different standard framework, right? Like what is eligible and what is not eligible. And certainly with NYCHA, at the pace capital projects move. So given that this is such an important unit to get vacant units online, we know they're hovering around 5,000, if not more. I'm deeply concerned that any barriers we continue to offer to this program will be an increasing number of vacant units, which I find unacceptable given the housing crisis and the transfer wait lists and everything else that NYCHA residents are certainly facing and contend with on a daily basis. So we're in the middle of those conversations. We will certainly see in January preliminary budget what it looks like again, and we're facing several rounds of cuts that were announced with the mayor. That will be round 2 in January and certainly another in June. So I think with that, happy to answer questions. And some EREP money is flowing finally, which we are happy to hear. That was promised, but it's a giant gap and we don't see collections increasing. So we're still facing a pretty tenuous situation in terms of rental collection for the agency, which we're closely looking at. So I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Councilmember, for that report and that update, and for the important work that the City Council's doing in this area. I'll pause for a moment just to open the floor to see if anyone has any questions, comments.
Yeah, happy to take questions or comments. And I guess the other thing I'd love to know is, obviously this will be a transition and monitorship. And I know this group certainly has done an enormous amount of work, both cohering around agendas and surfacing things that have been really important, and certainly in the oversight capacity and for pragmatic purposes, I'm very curious around what the transition to a new monitor will look like and how the transition of the information is gonna go. So it seems like I probably missed some of that earlier in the conversation, but I just wanted to pinpoint it as something that I'm keenly interested in because you're partners in this work and important partners. And so just wanted
So Asha, why don't I say a little more? So we appreciate that, and Bart and company, which is us, have really enjoyed working with you and your team. And of course, we still have another 2.5 months. So the process has just started. The announcement, I think the announcement was only made a couple of weeks ago. So as I said, it's just started. And, more than anything else, as I said, I mean, just being very frank, obviously we would have loved to continue, because even though the work is difficult, there's we've developed some really great relationships, particularly with NYCHA, but also, of course, with yourself, council member, other people on the CAC. And so whenever you get involved in something like that, you just want it to continue. That having been said, I really do believe that things are going to be fine. Obviously, given the massive size of NYCHA and all the information that we've developed over the last 5 years, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that Neil and his team really hits the ground running when they take over in March. So I know that's being very general and very high level. My sense is that we're going to particularly start having a bunch more meetings with them into the new year. As I said, it's pretty clear that a lot of the current team are going to be continuing on, a lot of the subject matter people, which of course is very important, because of course it's not only about their subject matter expertise and even their subject matter expertise with particular situations at NYCHA, but also of course the relationships that develop, because that's the whole, that really makes or breaks whether you have workability. And we've all been able to establish a great deal of workability between ourselves, NYCHA, and others. So that's what I see now is going to happen. As we go forward, and if you have any additional questions, you certainly don't have to wait till the CAC in February. As you know, we're always happy to have conversations with you and your team. So don't hesitate to reach out, particularly if you have any sort of a question or concern about something that you want to make sure is part of the transition.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dan, and certainly we will. And y'all have been really great partners to work with. So I think it's great to hear the reassurance and that those plans are forthcoming. So we will certainly be in touch.
Great.
Thank you. And then the important part as it relates to this group is that, of course, the CAC is mandated under the agreement, and that will continue in some form or fashion going forward. Manny, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is well. I had a comment on, well, two things with regards to safety. The first is that it has come to my attention and my experience that the NYPD is not providing police reports to our residents when they're asking it. Also, that certain instances such as trespassing or breaking and entering into an apartment, an empty apartment, which is starting to increase, also is not receiving police reports. I've asked for police reports to be provided, and we still have yet to get that. I have been present either on the phone or, physically when that denial or the neglect of that police report happens. The other instance with regards to safety is the obstruction in the lobbies. The fact that these lobbies are fire egresses and we have loitering. A lot of these lobbies are Viper networks. I think we have about 19 Viper networks throughout the city. And so that means that the police have access to the visuals of these lobbies. And what's happening in these lobbies is you have people that's standing around, also a lot of smoking. And so these lobbies become very dense with smoke. And then the type of smoke that it is can have an impact on people. And we're not seeing any attention or any strategy that is going to engage in that. Lastly, again, with police reports regarding trespassing, we're not having any police reports being created for those members for those persons in restricted areas that are found trespassing that may have been arrested. There's nothing being brought back to the local management or to NYCHA. And so there's a significant disconnect within the strategies of safety and our execution of it and our expectation of service, because a police report cannot be denied to any member, to any constituent in New York City. So for it to happen so frequently in public housing developments, it's truly concerning. And also the lack of attention to these safety areas such as our lobbies is also truly concerning. Thank you so much.
Captain Kwong, I know you're a visitor this evening and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just wondered if you had any response.
Well, in regards to the police reports, those are made available to the public upon FOIL requests. If you're a representation of an organization such as NYSHA, you can make a FOIL request with the department and they will provide you with a copy of police report. We can't give those police reports straight out from a precinct or a PSA. If you're like an individual victim, like if I were a victim of a crime and I made a police report, that I can go to my local precinct and they would give you a copy of.
So just for clarity, Captain Kwong, I'm
Right.
saying that one, our public housing residents, when they ask for a police report to be created for a specific incident that they have gone through, they are being denied. Two, when I'm speaking of receiving police reports, I'm talking when the housing authority, the local management calls the police because they're reporting a break and entry, because they're removing trespassers from an apartment, because they've reported trespassers in the basement or in a restricted area. For those instances, given that it's the local management who is calling the police and is reporting the crime, the police report would be entitled to them since they would be the victim. And so
That is
I
not the
understand what
case.
you're saying.
That's not the case. Just because they reported it as a representative, as a representative of NYCHA, they're not entitled to that report. And or a you would have to have a NYCHA like authority to file a FOIL request to get that report.
So then how would NYCHA press charges on a trespasser that violates on their grounds?
It's a trespass affidavit. If they're committing a crime already, so they should be a report and an arrest made if the person is present.
So then there's no communication and no paperwork being provided to NYCHA in order for them to further any consequences in that regard, be it a police report, an affidavit, or whatever it is that administratively the NYPD has to provide to any entity or government agency in order for them to fulfill their rights or to secure their properties. That is not happening. That, as well as people being denied the creation of police reports, which is also a significant matter.
Well, when you're saying people being denied a police report, I'm not familiar with. Yeah, okay. I'm not familiar with which incident you're talking about.
No, it's multiple incidents. I have documented in emails where I've demanded for the police to go back to specific persons to create the police report. I have also been a witness on the phone recently where a police was called to a residence and they were attempting to create a police report and they left. And I had to create an email in order for them to get a police report. I was on the phone and I was telling the officers to please give them a police report. So these are instances that if you would like, I can evidence. And
Excellent.
The fact
Okay.
that it happens.
So Manny,
Yeah,
are you
what-
saying create a police report? Are you meaning to file a complaint?
To file a police report. Like I have one resident
When you say
who was
police,
chased
because
into the lobby with a gun, and she went to go try to create a police report.
she
for
wanted
the
to
incident.
file a complaint with the police. So that there's a difference there. So you're saying that they want to file a complaint against someone with the police and they're not taking the information.
They wanted to file the incident with the police department and were denied.
Right. Well, if you're saying that one of your residents was menaced with a
Multiple
firearm,
residents.
all right, and the police failed to take action on that, that's a gross negligence on their part, and it will be investigated. And if in fact they didn't do what they were supposed to do, they would be disciplined for that.
Yeah, this sounds like an important matter that, why don't we take offline so that we could get more details and follow up?
Fantastic.
And I'm glad you have the emails too. So if you could share those with us, I'll coordinate with you so that we could look into this. But thank you for bringing it up because you bring up multiple layers, being able to file the complaint, being able to receive it, and it might be just a matter of better understanding the protocols, or maybe we're using different semantics. So we'll get to the bottom of that. Thank you, Manny.
And if just to flag the other question that Mr. Martinez mentioned around getting reports, crime reports on what's happening on the campuses. My understanding is that at PSA meetings, those things should be happening. Is that not correct?
I don't understand that question. What do you mean it should be
So
happening?
the same way that you go to a community board meeting and the officers will come and say, you know, this are the stats of what is happening in the community.
Right,
Just what you did earlier.
right.
For specific developments, isn't that supposed to be happening at PSA meetings?
It is, but I think Mr. Martinez was was talking about specific complaint reports.
Well, he asked two questions. He asked
Okay.
specific.
Right, that information,
problem.
yeah.
But the broader problem about reporting, I'm sorry, we're acting like Mr. Martinez is not here. Mr. Martinez, did I hear you correctly that you asked two questions?
So, with regards to the PSA or the community council meetings, to my knowledge, they do make that general reporting available. They do so they do commit that. My questions was, one, the police report, the lack of engagement with the community with regards to them being able to file a complaint, and two, the NYPD's disregard for lobbies and the obstructions that happen in those lobbies with regards to fire and egress and
Got it.
expectations of that.
My bad. I heard
No.
a different question there as well. So thank you. We're answered.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you also, Captain Kwong, for weighing in. I'm going to ask Chief Secreto to round us out in this conversation with updates on your side, please. Chief Secreto, you're on mute if you're speaking.
How about now?
Okay.
You got me now?
Now we can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, was my honor to yield my position to Councilmember Viles. My honor. There's a side of me that wants to jump in on what Manny Martinez was saying, but I'll leave you guys to go offline. But one thing that I don't know if he was saying, when people break into the apartments, right? We have a lot of that going on. And someone calls the police, they're not going to get a copy of the police report because it's a NYCHA apartment. It's a NYCHA, apartment. But if someone gets their apartment broken into, they certainly should get a report. I know they used to charge people. I think they give them for free now, but I don't know that that's what he was mentioning. But if you guys want to talk about that offline, certainly. And I wish Inspector Gottesman was here. He probably could clear that up. But one of the things that we're dealing with recently is the new guard company took over the senior buildings in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx starting, I think it was November 27th. And that transition has not been a smooth one. It's been kind of choppy. So we're getting complaints from different senior buildings that there was no guard there. There was no guard for a couple of days. So some that come to mind are Meltzer on 2nd Street, Causey House on East 117th Street, Haber in Brooklyn. So it seems like it's getting better, but the last 2 weeks have not gone that great as far as the security guards in the senior buildings. The Queens.
What seems to be? You said it's not going well. What seems to be the primary concern?
Well, the thing is, they need about. I would imagine they need about 100 guards. There's 56 senior buildings. Most have 8-hour shifts, just one 8-hour shift. A couple have 16 hours, and one Woodson houses in Brooklyn, where 3 seniors were killed over a couple of year period, about 4 years back. They have 24-hour coverage. So they would need roughly 100 guards to do, the 5 days and the weekends, and I don't think they had that number. And largely, what these companies do is when a new company takes over, they recruit guards from the previous company. So the company that's leaving, their guards are recruited, and I don't think a lot of them are trusted to go over to this new company. Some agreed to go over to the new company, got the uniforms and what have you, and then didn't show up. So it was choppy. And then I think, and I don't want to say I don't blame them, but I understand it. The old company did not cooperate with the new company coming in, right? So they tried to discourage their members from going over to the new company, maybe gave them an incentive of some dollars to stay. So this new company did not have a smooth transition. Now, in Queens and Staten Island, this same process took place 2 months ago. It was a lot smoother.
Can you back up for a second?
Mhm.
Councilmember Aviles raised a question in the chat, and I have the same one. Why did they switch companies?
The company, the first company was Allied Universal, and they had a 3-year contract, and that contract expired, and so they had to rebid to to come back, and they didn't get the award. So 4 companies bid to for the contract. Allied Universal, ISS Action, Wisdom, and Securitas. And Securitas kind of priced themselves out. They were too much. We asked them to come back with a best and final offer. They didn't come back. And then Allied, they didn't score well. There's a scoring process. They didn't score well in the process. And the other 2 companies got the bid. And also, one of the things that with Allied, we've had some missteps by them and different things, and in our during our contract with them. Sometimes, the guard is not on post. Sometimes we have fire guards. Sometimes the fire guard is not there, and we have a fire. So there was some issues with Allied as well. So that's a big thing we're working on. We were on a call today with ISS Action, which is the company, and it seems to have gotten better. They seem to have been doing some recruiting, have some recruiting success. Also,
Now, is there an opportunity for NYCHA residents to apply for some of these guard positions?
yes, and we spoke to them on the call about that. I spoke to Yuka and Leroy about blasting out a message from their company that they're hiring, what the requirements are, what the pay is, and what have you. And they've agreed to send me that. I'm going to give it to Yuka. Yuka's going to send it out to the tenant leaders to get out to the men and women residents of NYCHA. That's a good point, though, Asha. It is. Because they need people. That's their problem, that they don't have enough people. Okay, I see your message, Councilwoman, and I will certainly make sure that that's done. Tonight we're also doing the homeless initiative. We did about 90 such initiatives this year. Now this comes out of a MOU with DHS, NYCHA, and NYPD, and we go twice a week. It's not the best. I wish we could do it more. But we go twice a week. Some days we've added a 3rd day. I think tonight they're going to Melrose. And what they'll do is we go as a team, maybe a team or 2, depending on how many people from DHS come, and we offer services, whether it's mental health, drug treatment, or a shelter. And sometimes we get a taker on a drug treatment or something, but most times they say no and they leave. We did something different last week. There's been a lot of media recently about the mayor's mental health removal, involuntary removal, whereas someone is maybe violent, have mental health issues. We had such a case in Metro North. There was a guy there, he's setting fires in the hallways, he's threatening the caretakers. So we worked it out with PSA 5, Captain Maneri, with Department of Health, DHS, and we went in and picked him up, took him to Bellevue. He was there for a couple of days. In the media reports, many of the people that they picked up under this process had successful outcomes. Maybe they got apartments, or maybe they got the help that they needed. Unfortunately, in this case, this guy was released in a few days. I haven't gotten reports that he's back over there yet, but he was pretty much a menace to that development. And this was like a good shot at trying to get him the help he needed and, you know, do something positive for the development as well. What else I got? The Amazon lockers. They've 32,000 lockers have been installed in 17 different developments, 159 buildings. It's a positive. People are not getting their packages stolen as they have prior to this initiative. It's a pilot program, though. Some people, we usually rely on the tenant presidents to tell us whether they want this program or not. Some have said they don't want it, and I don't know why they would say that. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it's a pilot program. We take the lockers out. But so far, they've delivered over 32,000 packages, and without any thefts or any you know, negative outcomes. And then we have the safety plan. We're still going forward with that. The authority-wide safety plan.
Pause for a moment on the Amazon lockers, which, as you
Mhm.
said, seemed like a really good thing, and it seems like it's been reducing package theft. I know when we talked about it some months ago, there was concern that perhaps due to space constraints or safety issues, having, you know, some, you know, people could get behind it or things like that. Has that ended up being a concern in actuality, or has it all worked out?
Well, the 17 developments that have these lockers, and I've been present when we go out and walk through the development, and they actually look at the front entrance and see if there's space, if maybe there's concrete or there's pavers that could support the lockers. Yes, we don't want to put it in a position where someone could hide behind it and hit a, you know, a resident over the head as they're going in or out of the building. So those are all concerns. And some of the developments have not, they couldn't accommodate these lockers. So I think it was, you know, as I was looking at this, some developments have 15 lockers and others only have 2 because they couldn't accommodate. You know, some buildings could accommodate it, others couldn't. Some had the space, some don't. So we do actually go and take that into consideration. We walk with our tech services unit and Amazon, and they have you know, tape measures. They measure and they come up with whether this building is conducive to the lockers or not.
Chief, can the Postal Service or UPS use those lockers, or it's just Amazon?
It's just Amazon. It's just Amazon, and they have to go outside. They're not inside the buildings. So that's, you know, because most of these lobbies do not have the space to put, you know, a set of these lockers there. They're 6 feet high, and they started out 3 feet wide. Now they're putting 6 feet wide. So, but to your point, it's just Amazon, and it's not just for NYCHA residents. You know, it goes by zip code. So if you live, you know, in that zip code, you can have your package delivered to those lockers.
So is Amazon paying any kind of rental fee because they're effectively steering packaging to them, since UPS doesn't or Postal Service can't compete with that?
I don't think they are. I don't think they are. I know Postal Service.
Maybe look at that as a revenue source.
You know, that's over my pay grade, Edna.
No, but not,
you know,
not over your thought processes, Chief. You know, you can come on now.
But now UPS, United Postal Service, they have lockers in some buildings. I know Wagner. I was in Wagner. They have lockers up there. But I kind of thought we were getting away with something here by having this for free for our residents. It's not costing them anything, and getting their packages stolen is a big thing. It's
a big thing for Amazon. So nobody wants it stolen. So, you know, it's a win-win. And if there's a win-win that could provide some sort of revenue stream, it's worth looking at.
I know.
I'm just saying.
No, I know, and they did. I believe they did have a job fair to offer jobs to our residents, and they did some other community-related things that I thought was good. But I get your point.
Okay, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief, for that update. And it's also, I'm happy to hear that the number of homeless, unhoused initiatives have increased as well. That's important.
Asha, it's a very a positive thing. I mean, we don't get, large numbers necessarily, but the tenants are happy to see that we're doing something because it is an issue in NYCHA. I got a call yesterday from, I think it was Parkside. The lady told me it's like upwards of 5 people in the building while she's calling me. 5 people, 3 people on her floor, a couple of people on the floor above. And I reached out to the 49th precinct CO and he sent some people over there. But it is an issue.
Yeah. And thank you also for your leadership on our Safety and Security Subcommittee. We do meet twice a month to focus on a lot of these issues and to just be able to really drill down. So we appreciate your additional participation in all of those meetings and your hard work, Chief.
No,
thank you for that.
Thank you.
We have Nancy Ortiz on the line, who had been a CAC member who now works in your department, who's been a tremendous partner with us as well. I know she's been working on the Amazon locker issue and a number of these. Nancy, I just wanted to give you a chance if you wanted to say anything.
I believe Chief Vice President Secreto responded to all the questions regarding the Amazon lockers.
Perfect. Thank you both.
And I should just, Nancy was a big piece of that, walking the grounds and communicating with Amazon and the residents to tell them what's to be expected. And that's one thing I want to end on. I think we could do a better job, NYCHA, telling the residents what's coming. I think sometimes we spring things on them and, just the fact that they don't know what's coming is kind of insulting. So, and Nancy did this for me this week, or last week, I should say, with the guard company, this new guard company. The residents are coming down, and all of a sudden, in the lobby of their building, there's a guy in a different uniform, and nobody told them anything. They got to know their guard over the years, and now there's a new person there in a new uniform. So that was a drop opportunity for us to reach out to the residents. So we did that. Nancy made calls to all the tenant leaders, telling them what's going on, and that was big.
That is important. That communication strategy is critical. We have found that as we have been involved in the monitorship as well, that we try to make all the calls to the residents and stay in close touch. It's critical. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Okay, we're going to switch along those lines to talk with our community partners. And let's hear from our representative, Ms. Myers-Powell, on some of the work that you're doing with Brownsville.
Sure, give me one quick second. Okay. I don't have a bunch of slides, just one or two, just a couple visuals, but thank you so much. Well, good evening, everyone. And maybe this is actually a perfect kind of segue to the presenter right before me said it's really important to make sure you give people a heads up of what are you working on and kind of what's coming down the pike so people can be prepared for the opportunities and feel like they're included in all the kind of new things that are happening. And I think that's definitely important when you're working with residents and I think even with our partners. And so the update that I wanted to give today was about a new initiative that the Brownsville Partnership is a part of called the Community Investment Trust. So this is actually, we're right now part of a feasibility study with 3 other cities. So we're representing Brooklyn, but we're in there with an organization from Minneapolis, New Orleans, and Albany, learning about this model and in learning, not just learning about it, but figuring out how do we adjust it for our own cities and our own communities. And so the Community Investment Trust, or CIT, really, it's a wealth building model. It's a community wealth building model that's very specifically focused on kind of 3 components. One, being focused on that collective communal ownership of an asset. The second piece, those assets being commercial real estate. And the third piece, and I think very important to what many of the speakers have touched on today about residents, making sure that this is an ownership opportunity for residents. So what I love about the CIT model that I've been learning is that it really makes the word investor synonymous with your local residents. So this is the East Portland Community Investment Trust. This is 6 years old. It was established by a group called Mercy Corps out on the West Coast. And they're actually the organization who's leading the cohort for the feasibility study that we're learning from. So they're the original CIT, and this property you see in the picture is their commercial property. It's a strip mall of a mix of some local businesses as well as some local nonprofit organizations. And really, some of the key components for the community investment trust is first that it's geographically bound, meaning if you want to be an investor, when I say investor in this space, I'm talking about residents. Residents want to invest in this property. They have to live in the local area. So they have to live within the identified zip codes where this property is located or the adjacent neighborhood. So they want to keep it local. The second piece is that they want to make sure that it is affordable. So they allow people to kind of choose, what amount they'd want to invest on a monthly basis from a range of a minimum of $10 per month to a max of $100 per month. And so people can kind of, again, select, depending on your financial situation, where you're at, what you might have left over after you're paying your bills each month or other responsibilities, which you can contribute to this asset. A third piece is that they've made sure to acquire a letter of credit from the bank to ensure that if anything were to happen, right, the property goes belly up, that the residents aren't losing those investments. The part that's not on the slide is, I got an opportunity to actually go out early October to go check out the property, meet the residents, meet the businesses and the team that set this up 6 years ago. And the part that really stuck with me was the stories from the residents who the community that they're serving is mainly low income and it's renters. And so many people talked about how because of this opportunity, the kind of wealth they were able to build up in the 6 years, they were able to, put a down payment on their first home, pay down their kids, their kids' college tuition, or pay down their own debt. Some were able to start their own businesses. And so, this one investment opportunity kind of opened the door for other investment opportunities and for them to achieve some of their other financial goals that maybe felt, further down the timeline. Now they were able to accomplish or start to accomplish in just 6 years. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because the Brownsville Partnership, we're not quite at this place, right? We don't have the property. We're just kind of learning and starting out. But what we're in the process of where we're at right now is we've done some community asset mapping to get a sense of where are the places and spaces that matter to the Brownsville community. We're starting to do some property analysis and visiting some of our own commercial properties in Brownsville and around Brownsville to get a sense of what kinds of commercial properties are available, how much do they cost, right? They're definitely not cheap. What kind of conditions are these buildings in? What are they located near? And so on, because down the road, when we're in a further along place in this project, the biggest piece is about resident engagement and bringing residents into the process so they can be investors. And so this project also involves some financial education. There's an owing to owning course where residents go to, I believe it's about 4 or 5 sessions, and then they're able to start with their monthly investments. And then over time, and this was an infographic that the Mercy Corps has created, as they're investing into the property each month, the business tenants are paying their rent, there's expenses. What's left over is going back to the residents as dividends or profit. And then each year, the share price changes as well. And so for the folks out in East Portland, Oregon, I believe their share price has increased each year. And right now, I believe they have 281 residents who are investing on a monthly basis. And so, I wanted to just, highlight this and share it with this group in this space that the BP is a part of, because while we're not quite at the resident engagement point yet, we will be eventually. And for Brownsville, one of the largest populations that we work with and collaborate with are our NYCHA residents. Most of our programs and initiatives include the young people and the older adults and the families that live in NYCHA. And so something that even started to come up while we were out there in Portland was, how are they engaging their public housing residents, if they have any? This seems like their population isn't as many folks living in public housing, but some of the questions we were wondering was, does this investment opportunity and would that impact their rent? We don't know. Would it impact their benefits? Are there any barriers we should be thinking about? And when we're at that engagement point, I think it was 2 meetings ago, a couple folks did some presentations about engagement work with residents in NYCHA. What are some of the things that might be a good way to engage residents when we have this opportunity available? Because we want as many, of our NYCHA residents to participate in this opportunity as possible. So I'm open to any questions, but just wanted to share this while we're in the beginning stages, just kind of highlight it and share it with all you guys. And of course, bring updates, across the meetings as we make more progress.
This is an important update. Thank you for sharing that, especially as you're starting to think about how to bring this to the Brownsville community. I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any questions?
So since Manny is on the Zoom, Manny, or even Mr. Hall, is this something that she might want to bring? They might want to bring to CCOP?
Well,
Go ahead, Manny.
no, go, Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall, go ahead.
Okay.
That's fine.
I guess I still have both feet on the ground. And the reason I'm saying that, I want to go back to what Chief Secreto mentioned. NYCHA residents right now, at this moment, okay, would love to deal with trying to ascertain a real estate entity. However, you must understand, since 2020, NYCHA has been hit by, the residents of NYCHA has been hit by the fact that the housing authority, in the middle of the pandemic, started privatizing these housing developments. We had to take this time to educate our residents on the 964 regs, the difference between red and PAC, and the difference between Section 8 and Section 9. We are still educating our residents on that to give them a full, clear understanding. The good thing is now, and I say now because we had Nostrand houses, and they now make a preparation to come in and ask residents. However, this is the first time they've started doing this. Prior to that, all that was done was you were told you're going to be privatized. And this is why. And the residents never had a say. So it's a lot for NYCHA residents to consume at this point in time. And it's a lot worse for TA presidents because they've been burdened with trying to educate folks on what is really going on. And that's what makes this very sad, because the 964 rules and regulations, which we are supposed to be abiding by, and now it is so important that NYCHA now wants to educate all their employees on, that never took place before. And it's fighting a losing battle. So in order to jump into the real estate aspect, and it's a great idea, but it's an idea whose time has not come as of yet. I yield. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think, oh, there we go.
Thank you for that perspective. Although to that point and the privatization, but maybe it's a question for Manoush, and not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious if there's been any discussion about ownership interest for NYCHA residents in any NYCHA property.
I don't have any information that I can share, that I'm aware of that I can share, that I can check on that.
Thank you. And Mr. Martinez, I know you wanted to jump in as well, please.
Just real quick, and I truly understand, Mr. Hall, everything that you're saying, and you're 100% right. One thing that I will say is the difference between Section 8 and Section 9 is 40%. You get 40% more with Section 9 than you do with Section 8, 80 versus 120. But the model of the Community Investment Trust is very, to me, it seems like a great opportunity to explore as a business model for resident management corporations, right? It has this cooperative structure to it, but on an investment of land, but now transition this over to a resident management corporation, which, yes, it's a nonprofit, but that nonprofit would be able to, under successfully managing, partial management of a property, would be able to invest in businesses in the surrounding communities, right? Invest in low income housing and development or the taking over of that. So, seeing how that can transition over as a new business model for resident management seems very, very promising. So I'm very interested.
That's a good point. And thank you again for that update. And as you can tell, we're very interested in following this. So we look for more discussion on that. I'm now going to switch to our NYCHA representatives. Manoush and Samantha, if you can please give us your updates.
All right. Thank you, Asha. Good evening, everyone. So I wanted to provide some quick updates about some of the developments that we've been discussing in the last few CACs. So one is the capital tracker. So the capital team has informed me that they are just about ready to launch. I think either at the end of the year or early next year. And then they will be scheduling demos thereafter. I know we had plans for Capital to do a demo during this CAC. So I think we can, if possible, schedule it for February for the next CAC, or we can just work with Capital and try to schedule something for this group earlier than that in January. And then I think in a previous meeting, I talked about the rollout plans, which would include, there will be an instructional video that would come with the demo. The demos will be conducted at the properties with the strategic partnerships teams, and also conducted at the beginning of any recurring meetings with resident leaders and property managers. And then there will be communication through our Department of Communications. There'll be demos with the CAC, the Resident Advisory Board, and the Roundtable. And the link to the tracker will also be available on the My NYCHA page, which I think was part of the feedback that was collected.
Will it also be available in the app?
As I believe so, but let me just make a note of that.
Which for our group, I would love to see the rollout in January if we can plan for that, please.
The next area was, we talked about the
Manoush, if I could just raise for your consideration. We've been hearing and have spoken to people about a sense that the tracker will not be tracking discretionary funds, and that kind of like set people's heads on fire, since that's the purpose for the tracker. So if you could, if you know that or not know that, or if you could track that down and let us know what's the story with that, that would be really great.
I can follow up with an email to you probably by the end of this week.
That'd be great. Thank you.
The second area was, last time we talked about the stair climbers for residents who need assistance using the stairs when the elevator service is interrupted for example, the elevator modernization program. And there were questions about the training. So earlier this month, actually, the manufacturer of the stair climber has trained the maintenance training unit in our learning and development department, who are now then training the volunteers, which we're up to over 320 volunteers across the developments. The trainings, I believe they started last week, and includes classroom training, and there's hands-on training and test. And the manufacturer also trained on the maintenance and repair of the stair climbers as well, so that there would be, so that the L&D trainers would also have the knowledge and ability to maintain and repair the machines as needed. And the order that the trainings are for volunteers who are in developments where there's currently elevator modernization. So that's exciting.
It's great to hear that there's so many volunteers. coming from the developments to support the residents in the developments.
Yeah, and I just want to add that I think most of the volunteers are NYCHA staff members, as I mentioned the last time. And I think they're mostly caretakers and maintenance workers, and they're people who know the residents. They interact with them frequently, so they've expressed an interest to want to help their fellow residents.
And this is really great. Is there no consideration of training in developments, senior developments, or developments where there is known history of disrepair?
You mean if elevator service is not out, but there's frequent
where there are frequent outages, where the data shows there's a greater likelihood of an elevator going out of service than others, maybe that might be a place to have volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, well, with the over 320 volunteers now, they have the developments covered, I believe, just about. But also, I think if there's no volunteers in a particular building that's needed, they do kind of check in and borrow from neighboring developments. But even if there's not a planned outage, if there is an unplanned outage, volunteers may be available.
Yeah, I think it often is those unplanned moments that become the most disconcerting for the residents when you're stuck. So that's an important point. And you could perhaps keep us posted on what the protocols are for the volunteer community in those circumstances. Thank you for that. Are there any other updates, Manish?
I think Mr. Martinez has a question.
Just real quick about the volunteers, right? So you said most of them are NYCHA staff. Are there any volunteers that aren't NYCHA staff, and where do they come from?
They're all NYCHA staff, mostly are caretakers and maintenance workers.
Oh, so all the volunteers are NYCHA staff.
That's right.
And they do get paid. They're on the clock while they're volunteering, right? So they are getting paid.
For their for their normal course of work, but there's not a separate compensation for obviously the operating the stair climbers.
So, but it's okay. But we're still using the word volunteer to make it sound like they're not getting paid to do that work.
I mean, it's in the sense that it's not part of their job descriptions. So they're volunteering to do
okay.
this.
No, I don't want to go into that, but I want it to be known on here that the term volunteers for NYCHA staff that are being paid while they're doing that work, right? So no NYCHA staff can volunteer while they're off the clock, just to be clear.
Because this work is outside of the scope of their duties.
No, understood that, and I understand that, but no NYCHA staff can volunteer if they're off the clock. So if they're not punched in to do the work, they wouldn't be able to volunteer their services to do that, correct?
Not 100% sure on that. I can.
Oh, could you please send me an email? No, well, send somebody an email. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point, and it actually also ties into the question about the unplanned outages. Like, what happens if there's a outage at 7 p.m.? Is there a protocol to get some of those volunteers in place? And what happens if it's outside?
I mean, after hours, that's when we have the emergency services department step in. So there is existing protocol to handle that.
Okay. Oh, that's good to hear.
And the other thing I want to mention is, again, if they go through the training and then they say they don't want to do it, obviously, they're not going to be forced to operate the stair climbers.
Okay, thank you for those updates. Let's turn please to Samantha Rogers.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So I have a brief and quick update. I only have one update tonight, and that is for Resident Roundtable. I apologize that Leroy couldn't make it. He did have another engagement that came up at First Houses, and so I do not have his updates, but he did say that there was not a lot of change from what he reported on last time. But for resident participation and civic engagement in regards to the resident roundtable, we are coming to the close of our second year of roundtable and the second iteration, and what this cohort, coupled with those who were on roundtable last year and those who were added to roundtable this year, and what they have been working on in this second year. And so in our meeting next week in roundtable, we will just discuss the NYCHA's e-bike policy, because we did do a call out to residents to submit comments. There is an open comment period for e-bike policy from now until December 31st. And so we will have a presentation on that from NYCHA to encourage resident roundtable members, one, to comment if they haven't, and also to, as a part of their assignment, spread the word to other residents within their neighborhood portfolios to make sure that they get their voices heard during the comment session. We will have a full update from strategy and operations.
Please
Sure.
pass on that for any of our viewers and the residents on our call. How can we find the policy and where to make comment?
I can send you that. It is on our website, and we sent out an email to all residents, and there were calls sent out, but I don't know the specific area right off the top of my head, but I can send that to you. And I can also send you a copy of what we sent out to residents. But
Great,
there is a link for them to click on to add their comments. I just don't know it verbatim off the top.
Okay, thanks
for that question. Yep, no worries. We also will have an update from strategy and operations on where we status kind of all of the suggestions and recommendations from Roundtable over this last 2 years. Roundtable has done a lot of work, has made a lot of suggestions. We spent a large part of this second year of Roundtable receiving feedback from NYCHA on where we are in those suggestions. And so we thought we'd spend the last meeting of the year going over the status of all of those. And then a brief update from the heating department on the status of, heating preparation and how well that is going. And then in January, as I mentioned, when I first began to speak about Roundtable, where are we in this second iteration? What, did this second year cohort work on? And so there will be a full presentation from the residents on the feedback that they have been able to garner this year from residents within their neighborhood portfolio. We did work with 2 outstanding interns who came in through strategy and operations and were paid, and it was a paid internship, and they were able to help put a story map together based on all of the feedback that the residents were able to garner. And so this story map will include some cute video, some voice recordings that they were able to capture from residents, and also just some quotes in different subject areas that we know is prevalent across NYCHA. And so we're really, really excited for this next 2 months in Roundtable and can't wait to see what's next. Next week's roundtable meeting, I'm sorry, yes, Ms. Handy, you asked, I saw the question. Next week's resident roundtable meeting is on the 20th. It's on Wednesday, December 20th at 6 p.m. It is usually on Thursdays, but that meeting has changed to Wednesday nights, third Wednesdays of the month at 6 p.m. So it is on the 20th next week at 6 p.m.
I did have the opportunity to see a snippet of the story map draft, and it's really coming along nicely. The residents did a great job interviewing fellow residents and getting good information, and the interns have been tremendous putting that together. So I'm excited to see that come together and that gets shared widely, and hopefully we can share some of it on our February CAC as well.
Yeah, and also that story map is going to live on the NYCHA website. So we're excited about that too, that we have a place for, all of this work to go and live.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your leadership on the resident roundtable. It's been good to see all of the work there. So with that, I think that concludes all of our updates that were on the agenda. Marnoush, I think you wanted to give another comment. Please proceed.
I was just checking my notes from the previous meeting, and after 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday, the any Star Climber service request would be fulfilled by the Emergency Services Department, not the volunteers.
Okay, thank you for that update. Okay, so in our last minute, I just wanted to thank you all again for your volunteer service as members of the CAC. For all of you, I know this is kind of going above and beyond your daily duties, and you're already working super hard in your jobs and as resident leaders, and we appreciate the dedication you've shown to the CAC these past 5 years, coming to our 6 p.m. meetings and always being so thoroughly prepared with their updates and insights and keeping the work moving. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Wish you a happy and healthy holiday season. And please, we will reach out to each of you individually to talk about scheduling for our February CAC meeting. We want to do it on a day and time that everyone is available, because we're hoping to see everybody in person for the final CAC of this current team meeting, but certainly not the final CAC meeting. But we look forward to seeing you all in person in February. Thank you again, everyone.